What do I think is the fundamental issue with Ancapism or libertarianism in general? Simple. It starts at the question, how do we build a society? Who builds a society? Nobody. You don't build a society. We evolved. We came into our brains as human beings already in a society. It was already built. It's how community works. It's how family works. So fundamentally, one of the big issues is nature versus voluntary or involuntary actions. It would appear that there's like the Crusoe economics, for example, will always put someone on a desert island by themselves and then start introducing people. But how did that man get there? Really? He got there by some ship, from some society. You're not building a society, you're talking about a man trapped on an island. It's not the same thing whether you like to imagine so or not. It's not the same. If you want to actually be objective, actually deal with reality, you don't just put people on desert islands. You actually ask, in the case of real human beings, how did we get here? We got here by family, right? You were born to your parents. That's how it works. If you voluntarily choose to go live in the woods, you're going to be up against a pack of wolves. There is no such thing as the alpha beta mix. That was an old thing that the guy who created it spends his life now trying to debunk his old book that people won't stop reading. Okay? A wolf pack is a family. The alpha is just dad or mom. And then the other one's the other parent. And the others follow their lead because they're their children. It's a family. Wolves move in families. Gorillas move in families. Chimpanzees move in human beings move in families. Look at a native tribe. Family. They're blood related. That's how it works. What do you not particularly want to do with your family? It's usually quite frowned upon to fight them. So as a family unit, you come up with some family house rules so as to not fight. The family grows, gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and suddenly you have a town. Small little tight-knit community of mostly a bunch of cousins, really. And it keeps growing, and more people, more cousins from other families start moving in. And then suddenly you have a city. You need a set of rules that operate the same as the family rules. Right? We're not going to hurt each other. We're not going to steal from each other. We're going to try to resolve disputes in a fair and peaceful way. Now, this is how you interact with other human beings. Why? Because we can't read each other's minds, and we need to be able to use our minds. So, what comes naturally in a society is being surrounded by people that you don't really want to fight with for your own reason, or because you don't like hurting people's feelings, but we're just trying to get along. Life is hard, and we're trying to get along, trying to go along to get along, right? It's unnatural, it's abnormal, it's irrational to go and move into the woods by yourself. It's irrational, it is abnormal to find yourself alone on a desert island. Right? So if you find yourself then alone on a desert island, You are not so much presuming statehood when you want to form a government when someone else comes by. No, you want to form a connection, a friendship, a family. That government, that state, that protection agency, that insurance company, whatever you want to call the thing that is the agreement between the two people, three people, four people. That's just human interaction. And humans can be illogical. They can be irrational. They can be abnormal. So, you have to set some ground rules that say, we're not going to act irrationally towards each other in the sense that we're not going to hurt each other. We're not going to steal from each other. Setting ground rules. So, along with this principle, then, is the anarchist, the Ancap, the whatever. Some of them will suggest that there are objective laws, and by that they mean literally somehow metaphysical based. They will deny it to the furthest ends of the world that they're world of form Platonic ideas, but that there are Platonic laws, that there's something so fundamental that you don't even need to actually observe it. You could just close your eyes the moment you're born and introspect, and you'll find it somehow, eventually. The perfect laws. If this were even true, which it's not, if it were true, what's the point of the anarchist system? Because first you would start out your system with all of the anarchy, and I don't mean chaos necessarily, but all of the businesses starting up and doing their thing, and then one of the businesses decides through pure good economic practice, these are really good objective laws. And then all of the other ones who aren't practicing objective laws, they're losing business to this other one. And so then they get scientists working on it, or praxeologists who are or are not scientists, because you get to decide that one, praxeologists. You don't like science, but it's also a science, but also it's not that one's on you. You can decide that one. But the point being, if we all are working properly and there's no fighting at all, wouldn't all of this businesses, all the insurance companies, all the security forces, they'd all eventually discover the objective laws, and therefore they would all eventually have the same objective laws. And then even though there's still different private groups, in one very real fundamental sense, they would all have the same constitution. So what is there to say that they're not acting as a full country if they all share that same objective constitution? And in which case, shouldn't eventually all of the world governments one day discover these objective laws, and all of the world governments will come together, and we will have a one world government, and then there will be just one government, one state, one private security force, one insurance company, whatever you want to call it. If laws are objective, eventually we will all get to them, right? Even in the case of international law right now, like people move, people migrate, people are refugees. If America becomes this perfect anarchist state as such that does this, and then they discover objective laws, and then they write a new constitution, essentially, whether they write it or not, the unwritten, perfect, objective law constitution would span the entire continent, and other nations would eventually flock here as refugees, and then those other competing countries would have to discover objective laws or perish, right? But then we would all share the same law. So what's the point of saying we need to have multiple different governments not one monopoly, when the fundamental final product is one government, one world government, right? And the only point in that is to say that, oh, we shouldn't have monopoly of force. But if you don't enforce the law, then people aren't going to follow it. And you can pretend like people are going to follow it, but every single one of these people, is maybe David Friedman, is there any other person under the age of 30 who actually believes in this? I don't think anyone under the age of 30. It's really the same as, in a sense, as communism. Like, you got your Bernie Sanders and like your AOC, but they're people who eventually, they're not actually communists, right? Your Hassan Pikers, you got your Gucci bag communists. They're not communists. They're scamming you. So any heartfelt Ancap, I believe, is the same. They're not old enough to know the difference. They're like the communists, are all under a certain age, and then you reach a certain age and you fall off, or you learn how to make money from it, and you're no longer the thing that you say that you are, essentially. This brings me to a very key point, I would think, that you could almost title this section Tar Pit Ideas Part 2. And this is the idea of same but different. Same but different. The Ancaps have it, Flat Earthers have it, and the Ether people have it. And it's the same idea. It's to everyone on the outside of their little cult. Everyone on the outside looks at what they're saying and just goes, you're just saying the same thing as everybody else. You just keep calling it something else. You keep giving it a different name, but you're repeating yourself. It's same but different. Right? So, for example, first example as a demonstration, Flat Earthers. They will use the horizon, the curved, the non-curved horizon, to prove the flat Earth. The Globe Earthers, the correct people, also use the horizon to prove that the Earth is round. One goes out to the ocean and they say, I see no curve. And by that they mean from like east to west with south in the middle, they don't see curving in either direction. Right? They're expecting this actual sloping downwardness. They expect themselves to be of such a large size that they're looking at a ball. And when you look at a ball, you can see the ball curve because you're gigantic. And you hold the ball and you see the curve. They think by standing on said ball that you should still be able to see the curve go this way. Globe Earthers say no, the Earth is flat, look at the curve. And what they mean is that if you go over the curve, you disappear. And that further and further past that horizon, you start disappearing into that curve. It's the same argument. The curve proves my idea, or the horizon proves my idea. Only one of them can be correct. So then how does it curve? And this is part of that, the rationalism. The word is the same, but different. Curve. I'm looking for a curve. Curve. The flat earthers curve. They need it to be autistically similar to a ball's curve. They can't wrap their head around that if they were a bacteria on a basketball, that the curve would look like how boats over the horizon look. But they don't understand that. They have this kind of autistic, locked-in curve means on a flat surface, there's a hill shape. They don't see the hill shape. They don't see the curve. The same globe earther just looks at the horizon and says, no, like, that's a curve. Like, see how you can't see beyond it because things have gone past the curve? The ether example, the same thing. You give them the space-time. You say space-time is that which stretches and expands. Space-time is the thing that things live in. Everything is the space-time. All of the different fields, say, exist within this space-time. And they say, well, I don't believe in space-time because autistic rationalism, space and time in the dictionary are defined as one and defined as two, and I can't autistically, rationalistically put these words together, so therefore the word can't work. It's not good word. Therefore, if not good word, then not exist. And if not exist, then something else must exist. And then they create the ether, which is something that spans all of the universe. By all mathematical observations, it stretches and squeezes and expands, but they just say that's just math, but it does the identical thing. It has all of the different fields in it, and you look at them and you say, well, what difference is there here? What difference have you created? Same but different. It's the same thing. The Ancaps have their exact same thing. They don't want a government. Government means monopoly force. Monopoly force means bad because monopolies are bad. Why are monopolies bad? Because you shouldn't be able to own things, I guess. Fundamentally, at the end of the day, it would come down to having to own an idea. And then, and if you have the ownership, you can't literally hold an idea. Autism, that since you can't have the thing in your hand, if you can't hold it in your hand, then you can't own it. Because owning, autistic rationalism style, means holding. And if you can't hold it, then you can't claim it as yours. So, and we'll get into that. This comes down to the fact that they think that idealism, the world of forms, that even that baby who opens their eyes the very first time, they can close them again and just think out the whole world. And so a baby, an introspective enough baby, should be able to write Ayn Rand's Introduction to Objectivist Epistemology because it's just there somewhere in the universe. I call it the collective unconscious, to be plucked out of the collective unconscious, and by all means that you can't patent that which could be plucked out of the collective unconscious. That's how I see what they're talking about. But what was the point? Where am I even saying? The same but different. The Ancaps have their government, which the monopoly bad for a reason. Monopoly bad, government is monopoly. Therefore, we no longer have monopoly, we have state. Now, the state will run the exact same region. No, not state. That's bad. No. Some of us will say insurance companies. Yes. The insurance company will hold certain rules and laws and regulations with their own backed forces of gunned men who will enforce certain rules in a certain geographic region. Government? If you bring any normal person into the room and then bring in an Ancap, a flat earther, and an ether theorist, and let them give their arguments over and over and over and over, and then the normal person and the expert And a child, little baby, honestly, just listening to this nonsense, will say, it's just this, you haven't changed anything besides the name. And maybe the ways in which you got there. But you're clearly building up to the thing that is the most real, most respected thing. You just don't want to admit it. You want to have gotten there yourself. That's what this really is about. There are a bunch of autistic weirdos that want to have discovered the entirety of reality by themselves, and everyone else is just wrong. Which is a very strange thing. But let's keep going here. One of those things, then, in building such a society, is that it will always fail. And most political ideologies have some sort of utopia. Objectivism does not. Objectivism's ideal utopic society is one where people are just doing where people are just people. We do not want to control you, right? There's no society needs to allow for human behavior, which means that we also need a way to enforce when that human behavior breaks, because it does break. Humans are abnormal. It's very easy for us to go off the rails. Normal is an average. An individual is never normal. So we don't know what to expect from someone. But we want them to be respected in their rights and their property. So, as best as we can, we try to get some sort of objective law, right? But that would come under like just one. You only need one government. If the law is objective, you only need one government. The fact that there are many different countries, fine, good. We're okay with that, because we're not trying to force nobody. Under objectivism, you can start a communist compound off in the corner, so long as you're not enslaving people. If you start hurting people, the government's going to stop you. But every other political ideology, including Ancaps, have a sort of utopia where it's just this magical, well, people will stop committing crimes once the new rules are in place. How do you get the rules in place? No. Once the rules are in place, people will behave. And once you start, if you bring in a normal person or an expert or psychologist or anyone, and you start asking them real life questions like the person actually thinking it, the person actually debating them, like, no, if I could get away with crimes, I would. Would you not? Like, if you could just not get in trouble because no one will be out to get you because that person didn't pay their insurance security company, you just take them out. Most people are kind of like, well, that gangs exist, right? Like, they're people, hitmen and assassins and stuff already exist in today's society. So why would they stop doing the job that they're good at? Why would they stop being aggressive? Why would all of those men in prison who are essentially there because they lack a full ability to control their aggression through some psychological or biological means, why did they just stop when the new rules are in place? There's no answer for that. So what I like to do is I like to look at something that broke. Because when something breaks, it tells you something very specific about the nature of the thing that broke. It won't necessarily tell you why it broke, but it will tell you, in a sense, how to make it better. And by looking at that, you'll kind of see what it is that broke. And what breaks, what always breaks, are falsehoods. And so when you try to create this like Ancap society, first question is like, well, what if everyone starts stealing ideas from other people? Personally, if everyone were stealing my ideas, I would stop expressing them. And if I stopped expressing my ideas and everyone else stopped expressing their ideas because people are just going to steal them, where do we get new ideas from? Where do we get new movies or TV shows? Diving deeper, the praxeology and a lot of the Ancapism has this idealism that everything will come from one idea. That everything is a stolen idea. But if that's the case, where does the first idea come from? Speaking of ideas, solids, liquids, and gases can be found on and in the surface of Earth and above. All of those solids, liquids, and gases are essentially completely useless, besides food, water, oxygen. But we don't necessarily care about those because those are things that if we lost our ability to be rational as perceptual animals, we would still be able to find them and consume them. So, what is it that makes these solids, liquids, and gases so important to our society? We call them resources. What is it that allows us to create energy and like live on it? Like, what gives me the ability to film this right here, right now? I have a microphone which is attached to a little antenna, which is sending out a radio signal to the other antenna attached to the camera, which is collecting all of my photons and putting them on a little LED or a CCD screen, which is all collected and interpreted by computers, which are little switches that turn on and off. Where did all of this come from? To say that all of this came from stolen ideas, which eventually came from one single idea, is to argue the world of forms, whether you like it or not. Because you're saying that it was always going to be the case that cameras and microphones could exist. And there's no reason for them to could have existed. It's not necessary. Man-made objects are not necessary to reality. And if that's the case, then there's no way to pluck them out of the collective unconscious. There's no way to pluck them out of the metaphysical matrix. They're creations of a mind. And if I create a new microphone, or if I created the very first microphone, and then someone said to me that they're going to just steal it, I would destroy that microphone. And then no one will ever get it. And you can't say, oh, well, no, someone. It's not how it works. They do not exist as a thing in the universe separate from human minds. And that human minds can steal the idea after they're created and can work with them. But that's the point of why we need protections on them. So let's dive into that. Why we need the protection. The point that Ancaps seem to miss. Let us address, in a sense, the solids, liquids, and gases as a resource. For example, let us take oil. Oil is a resource. It's a liquid we find in the ground. You can say it's scarce. We are never going to use it all up. It's essentially an infinite supply. So first of all, the argument from scarcity, dead. The sun. Also, we have the sun. You can make solar energy. The scarcity of that, 0. It's unlimited. So, scarcity can't really be the issue. But let's move past that. Whether we say it's limited or unlimited doesn't really matter for my purposes here. But the oil itself, for thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, let's say 20,000 years, was completely useless to humans. Not just useless to humans, if it was on your property, you were in trouble because that was no longer like farmable land. So it was actually a detriment. It was the opposite of a resource. It was depleting your resource of whatever land that oil was taking up space from the real resources, in your opinion. And then one day, someone discovers how to make the oil useful. And so you suddenly have money under your land. That's not important. But what is important is that maybe you want to make an engine yourself. Or let's really dial this right back and go back to spear making, right? One guy has a stick and it's sharp and pointy and it does the job. But another guy has got a new idea. He's cut himself on rocks, taken off a few layers of skin. And he's got an idea for the stick. He's going to make it sharper by using that same rock that can peel away his skin. He's going to peel away the skin of the tree. And he's going to make a fine little spear out of it. And so, fundamentally, his idea, his new technology, that if he can control, if he does this in the dark, in the secret, if he operates in secrecy as a trade secret, how to make these spears, he can make money off of them. He doesn't want other people learning how to do this, because then they'll just make their own, and then he has to just go back to using just his one spear to just catch his one fish, as opposed to making spears so people will bring fish to him, right? So he doesn't want to go fishing. He hates fishing. He's very autistic and he likes being inside, and he's very happy with being inside, collecting sticks and making them pointy. It's a special interest. He does not want to go fishing. God, he does not want to go fishing. And so he really just wants to sell these sticks. But you know what? The only thing, and this is, the Ancaps have picked up on this, the only thing fundamentally, it goes down to the oil producers, goes down to the nuclear technicians, everyone, rocket scientists, fundamentally, at the end of the day, they're just a bunch of electrons moving around. And if you can do it in the correct way, then how could one be said to be stealing? Which, if you're already saying stealing in that sense, and you're tying that to literally taking physical objects, then you're already package dealing too many things. But, rewinding a little bit, all that makes one thing a stick, and the other thing his copyrighted spear, is the way in which he moves his hand. And if someone spies on him, and they see the way he makes his sticks, and they start making identical sticks and selling them for half the cost, then that man, now out of a job, has to go fishing. That's unfortunate. He does not want to do that. But more than that, he doesn't want to make a second type of stick. And further, no one wants to be around the guy who just stole the stick idea. Every time they have an idea, they make sure he's not looking. So, irrational to let's not say steal, because they're too autistic. It's not rational to use your electrons in neurons to take the same pattern of recognition when it's literally the pattern was taken by using your optical lenses to take in their photons and project an image of them working on your brain in order to then, let's not say take, in order to form the neurons such that they're near identical to their neurons so that you create the same tool. Instead, like, because if you do such a thing, people will see that you use your optical lenses to repeat patterns from nature, which they were hoping that they could actually have a good life on. And you're, whether you like it or not, that kind of makes you a meanie, and people don't want to work with you no more. So consider that as a long-term part of what we're trying to do here in building a society. So if other people in society see that you're the type of person to use your eyeballs to repeat patterns that make them happy, because this is the other thing too, right? These other people, like the guy who's making the spears, he was doing so because he doesn't like fishing. And so he was doing something to try to make himself happy. And someone comes along and they say, I see your happiness and I want it for my own, without ever putting in the work to actually discover their own being. And as someone who did put in the effort to discover their own being, like, it's insulting to, like, on one hand, you'd want to feel complimented that someone is willing to imitate you. But on the other hand, if you're actually someone who's like fulfilling your life, like you're making movies because you want to make movies, you're making YouTube videos because you want to make YouTube videos, you're making books, or you're having any creative ideas, you're creating inventions. Most people aren't doing that literally just for the greenbacks, right? They're doing it for the love of it. That's what movies and books and things are. This is the other part of the Ancap autism. They don't really understand passion. They have special interests. Now, not saying autistic people can't have, because I am autistic, just FYI, and I have passions, and I love doing this. I discovered that, though, and I took a lot of time and effort into discovering what I want to do for me. And so when I see other people, like the Ancaps, essentially just saying, well, I'll just steal your work, I don't even think in terms of like, oh, he's taking away my money. I think in terms of, I'm watching someone essentially commit ending what it means for them to exist as a human being. And that's devastating, really. But and other people who are even seeing other people inventing things and things like that, and they see that you're using your ability to see and memorize to do exactly that thing, it's just so inauthentic that people just will not want to deal with you. because people have minds and they actually know what it means to create things and steal things, steal creative ideas. And when they see other people doing it, it's creepy. So we have on one hand, you in being rational, if you want to be rational, the copying of neurons in order to replicate the trade secrets, whether you want to call it stealing or not, it's not good for your life. But we back up further that all it is, in a sense, all it is a hand movement to make this spear. And so the Ancap argues, why should you have a monopoly on essentially holding on to the secret, which is this hand movement as you carve? Why should you and you alone have access to this neuron connection? And this is the thing that I think the Ancaps really fundamentally miss, is that you don't really have a way of stopping people. Because that's the major thing. The Ancap thinks, if you're going to steal something and I can prevent you from stealing it because it's a physical object that I can grab onto and say, nope, that's mine. That's mine. You can't take that. And I can stop you with physical force from taking it, and only one person can actually hold the object in their hand at a time because it's one object and you'd have to fight over this object. Then that's what they're thinking about, is stealing. And so they think then that what it means to own property is the ability to keep it for yourself. So long as you can defend your property, it's property. The moment it's no longer defendable, it's no longer property, in a sense. And they have a very strict then sense that the moment that your invention goes from the physical to the ideal, it's now free, such that if you have an engine that is the world's greatest engine and it's no one knows the secrets of it but you, so long as you can hold on to it, it's your property. But if someone, if you got a really good autistic genius to just look at it with binoculars, and that's enough for them to see the mechanisms of how it works, and then they can try to replicate it, then that has gone from the physical to the ideal, and it's now free real estate. It's free property, right? Because that person, they didn't take anything. You still have your property. And so this is what the Ancaps, in a sense, miss. They think since ideas cannot be physically taken, then they should not be property. But fundamentally then, the issue is every single thing man has ever created or formed with his bare hands will fundamentally come down to just a rearrangement of atoms, which means that fundamentally all inventions eventually must become free property or non-property or collective, or however you want to try and form your words there. Eventually, everything must be collective commons, public domain, again, whatever you want to call it. The fact is that everything, in one sense, will come down to a hand movement. How the oil rigs are created will come down eventually to the way in which the steel is pounded, the way in which the bolts are turned, the way in which you put this solenoid next to this device, the way in which... So fundamentally, it's just going to be an arrangement of electrons, which someone could hypothetically have thought about without ever even seeing it. They could have seen it in a dream, hypothetically, and therefore nothing is property. So then literally all that is property is that which you can literally sit on and defend, in which case you'd have to spend your entire life worrying about what people are going to take the moment you turn your back. In which case then you'd have to create some sort of society with a person who will protect your stuff. But this society is a society in which we're not doing that essentially for free or as a monopoly government type thing, which means that you now need to spend the time you would have spent inventing new things or finding new hand movements to craft new types of spears. You now have to dedicate your time to finding the perfect insurance company. So now in a sense, everyone needs to become some sort of lawyer so that they best understand who to hire. And in fact, in that case, everyone should just become a security force. Really, all of the businesses will just eventually, it will, in which case it will just be a bunch of gangs. See how this kind of just tumbles down? If property, so let's just back up again. If property is just that which you can hold and defend, then they say that ideas are not holdable, so they shouldn't be property, missing the entire point that the reason that we need intellectual property is because all property fundamentally came down first and foremost to an intellect. It came down to this very thing. It came down to the fact that other people can just look sometimes and memorize and repeat. Look, memorize, repeat. Look, memorize, repeat. Look, memorize, repeat. Does that sound like a society you want to live in? Does that sound more like 1984? Does that sound more like The Handmaid's Tale? See, copy. See, memorize, repeat. We're just going to see it, and we're just going to repeat it. We're going to do the same thing over and over and over and over. One type of bread, one type of vase. We're going to just repeat. Why would we ever need new inventions, right? Because honestly, if there's an objective law, there should be an objective vase and an objective water bottle and an objective eventually we should just be able to find the one perfect form of everything. And when we do, it will all just come together as if some world of forms had always existed in some form of perfection, and we had just not had access to it until we thought long and hard about it. So let's go back. We go back to this intellectual property thing. We say, in a sense, that, or we're going to say philosophically here, in a sense, that intellectual property makes no sense because it's as easy as seeing it and then just repeating the pattern. And no one owns patterns, man. You can't own patterns, man. So you're trying to take from the cosmic geocentric shapes, man. You can't take the shapes, man. You can't copyright the shapes, man. So fundamentally here, what we're dealing with, you can't patent a shape, you know. So I think I'm just turning into a Canadian rather than a hippie. If you can't patent a shape, if you can't copyright a pattern, and really, let's just like a Cummins diesel engine. It's just a pattern, man. You know? That Ford Bronco is just a pattern, man. So, like, why wouldn't you download a car? You know what I mean? If you could download a car, wouldn't you? Personally, I would, but I know I'm stealing. You see? I know I'm a hypocrite. If I steal a movie, if I pirate a movie, I know I'm a bad guy. Being a bad guy is different than being a hypocrite. Okay? And that's part of it too. Knowing I can do irrational, unpurposeful behavior, criminal behavior. That's I think let's think about this. Actually, let's think about this for a second. I think they're criminals. I think they're bad guys. They're not nice people. They don't respect people. I certainly don't think that they have any respect for women. No offense. I'm not trying to, but I've seen too many debates with Ancaps where the topic turns very quickly from fighting over like a lawnmower to fighting over a girlfriend. And usually the opponent, whether like a socialist or an objectivist or someone else, they're like, "Whoa, whoa, what did you just say?" And the end cap's like, "Well, no, it's okay. Like, just imagine that your girlfriend's property." So I think honestly, and caps for the most part are criminally minded people with a guilt complex. Like, I know many objectivists, and I'm not going to name names right now, but I know many objectivists, and I'll include one, me, who will have irrational, like criminal thoughts at times, and we'll think to ourselves some stupid ass thought, but we're honest. We're honest about it. So long as we're honest about it, and so long as that we're honest about it, we know, we know we have irrational thoughts at times. And because of that, and that we can act without purpose sometimes, and that we can act with purpose irrationally. Yes, there are we objectivists know if we're actually not just these autistic type anarcho-objectivists, real objectivists know sometimes you can act purposefully irrationally just for a little hedonism, just a little hedonism, you know. And therefore we also just, if you're honest, you just accept it and say, like, you know what I don't I'm not in a religion. No one's going to, I'm not sinning. Oh, I put a tiny hole in my soul or something. No. So live your life to the most rational you can. That's a really good objectivist principle. To be autistically objectivist would be to live your life such that it's always so rational that, like, well, you're just being autistic, really. And then you're not having fun. Like, part of rationalism is knowing you're a human being, or part of objectivism, part of being rational, not rationalism, part of being rational is knowing you're going to make mistakes. Sometimes you're going to be irrational. Sometimes you're going to act without purpose. Sometimes you're going to act involuntarily. Sometimes you're hangry. Sometimes you're just hangry. So, ergo, we're not really hypocrites if we were to, like, violate this code or something. The Ancap, however, will see an objectivist saying something like that, and they're so autistic but they're kind of like, aren't you violating your religion? You're like, so I know if I pirate a movie, I'm a bad guy, but I think the Ancaps, I don't think that they can think of themselves as bad guys. I don't think they have it. I think they're not good enough, actually. Like that they don't actually have something of merit. So the only thing that they can really do is not be bad. And so the fact that they are bad means that they have to kind of make up reasons why it's not stealing. I think that they denounce intellectual property because they want free things, but they don't want to admit that they're communists, and they don't want to admit that they're bad people. Let's back up again. Let's go back to some philosophy here and think about, again, the very fact that that all engines, that all of our lights, all of our electronics, it's all just arrangements of atoms. And so the Ancap, in a sense, thinks to themselves, why you can't patent a pattern, you can't steal shapes. Shapes belong to everyone and no one. We don't therefore why can't I take it? But this is fundamentally the whole issue. If we go right back to the very beginning of our thing, society is kind of like being in a big family. And let's say it is a family. Let's take it to a family example. And say then that like we take it we take it to a family example and we think to ourselves what it is to not respect intellectual property in this grouping. IP, you take IP, they're just shapes. You can't patent a shape. You can't patent a shape, then why should you have ownership? Why should you have a monopoly? Why should you be able to use force, essentially? Yeah, let's dive into that like that. Why should you be allowed to use force or call up Big Brother to act forcefully against you or against the other if you feel that your idea has been taken, right? So you create some engine. It steals energy from the atmosphere. It maybe not steals. We're getting a little conflated here. The engine's operation is such that the static electricity of just the Earth's magnetic blah 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 powers this engine to almost perfect 100% efficiency. It's the greatest engine ever. Fundamentally, or like in one principle, the work required of one man to have invented it took his entire life and dedication to. But on the other hand, it was essentially the moving of one electron that shouldn't have been in one spot to a different spot, and then all of a sudden this stuff kind of works a bit better, and it was just this rearrangement of materials until it did something with the universe materialistically, as materials do, and they just kind of interact with the universe, and since they're all just universal things, like literally, I don't mean like universal in the Platonic form, but like they're entities in the universe, since that's the case, why should the inventor of said engine be able to use force against me for stealing it? Why do you get to use force on me if I took your engine idea? Is the question. And it would almost appear to be a good one, except for the fact that we go back to the fact that we live in a society. As silly as that meme has come, this society is our friends and family, our community. Now, perhaps another factor of Ancapism is maybe they don't fit in with their community very well. In which case, then, there might be some psychological reasons as to why they're willing to hurt others, essentially. But not psychologizing, going back, that society is made up of your friends and family and community. Even if you move away from your family into a different community, you're in a community which, for the most part, is a bunch of people who are friends and family. Like, most people, maybe not in big cities in America, big cities, because cities kind of suck, and fundamentally you're not going to get a whole family to agree to sucking. So most of the time, most places are rural towns who are, if you've ever been to a rural town, we're all related. We're all cousins. All right? So you're taking your cousin's idea for an engine, and you don't think he should be able to beat you up for it, or get the police to beat you up for it, because it's just a pattern. But, like, what is the fundamental reason that you're even in this society then? Really? That's the actual case that needs to be addressed here. What are you doing in this town? What is your purpose? Because if you actually want to start even on a desert island, like, and you're using a stick, the classic one I hear all the time is, what is it, Robertson Crusoe? They always say it so fast it sounds like you can't tell if it's one or two or three people. I'm gonna just call him Bobby. I'm just gonna abuse the crap out of his name, Bobby. And Friday, you see his name is Robinson, but I'm going to change it to Robert and then call it Bob, because I like messing with you, and that's hilarious. But Bobby and Friday are fighting over a stick, presumably because they're not right in the head, and all of the other sticks somehow don't exist. Oh, the stick must have washed up on shore. You mean it's waterlogged? Like, they imagine that this is the only berry bush and there's no other food. Who pollinated the berry bush? This doesn't. Their exam. No. Let's just make a note. I'm just gonna make a note. Hypotheticals. I'll come back to that. Hypotheticals. Perfect. Okay. So the what was I saying? Oh, the Crusoe examples. So we got Bobby and Friday, and they're fighting over a stick. And the Ancap argument, in a sense, is that they both can't use the stick at the same time. One wants to go fishing with it, the other wants to poke his fire with it. Now, see here, poking the fire with it is so goddamn irrational, because you're going to lose the stick. The stick that was getting you food. What do you need a fire for if there's no fish to fry? You kill Friday. He's an idiot. And he's hurting everyone. The Ancap say you can't hurt people. Because it goes against our non-aggression principle. Where did you get the non-aggression principle from? Because they think that it's okay. It's better to not hurt each other. Where do you get that from? Well, it's because it's better to argue. Where do you get that from? Well, because we're having an argument right now. So? That's because I can't reach you. What? You think after an hour, 2 hour, 3 hour debate, if I could reach you, we would still be debating? Especially if it's over law. Like actually, if we were actually on an island fighting over a stick and you were saying to me that your principle is to never act aggressively, and we're on an island and you keep telling me I can't do things, when you keep telling me that you can take all my things or my ideas and that I'm not allowed to ask you for coconuts in exchange for my ideas because you should just be able to get ideas for free, like, and your principle is non-aggression, I'm taking you out. It's non-negotiable. I don't know where you think that humans are peaceful. We will achieve peace after we take out the stupid animals. Okay? Like, when we bring peace to the Middle East, we don't start by telling the terrorists to be nice. You take out the terror first, then you bring peace. Peace comes for rational people. Sometimes you need to be aggressive to get rid of the aggressive people who cannot follow your non-aggression principle. Like, even to get to your non-aggression principle, you would have to take out all of the people in prison. Because they're aggressive. That's why they're in prison. They will do things against society and against individuals to get what they want in an illogical, irrational, purposeful way. Some of them without purpose. You really need to watch those ones. So, society exists in a certain way. And because society exists in a certain way, and because that way is essentially that we're all energy, that we're all just energy beings floating through the cosmos, just rearranging our electrons, because that is actually true, we do actually need rules that say you can't take ideas. Because fundamentally all we are ideas. If you take away the ideas, if you take away the ownership of ideas, you're left with animals. Right? You take away human ideas, you say human beings cannot benefit from their ideas. What is left but an animal? And then you argue that these animals need to agree on rules. What rules? The rules established by what? By ideas? What are ideas even mean in this case? Because I would think that in such a world, I would have my ideas of what objective reality is, and someone else would have their rules of what objective reality is, and we will fight. We will aggress against each other until we come to that point where we feel that the terror is gone and we can establish peace. In which case, fundamentally, whether we go to war the whole time or we establish it through some rule, eventually part of this whole process, which is compt positivism, mind you, is that eventually we will go from religion to philosophy to science. And this science will be some sort of objective law that we're kind of evolving to this positivistic view where utopia will arise once we kill philosophy, once we kill ideas, once we kill the idea that you could own ideas. Because that's what philosophy is, isn't it? Philosophy, like Ayn Rand's philosophy. Whoa. Kantian philosophy. Whoa. Platonic philosophy. Platonic philosophy. Whoa. Right? The people's philosophy. So, wait a minute. So then you can't own ideas. So then someone of this mindset would take something like anarchy and would try to combine it with something like capitalism to make anarcho-capitalism, and then would take something like objectivism and would try to smash that in. And you know what? Fundamentally, after you convince enough people of that, why wouldn't you integrate maybe communism? Because like at least one form of communism, right? Like the one that says that there's an objective law and that we should all come together as a type of state. You see? Do you see it yet? One more. Got one more thing on here. I just wrote down. Remember that? Hypotheticals. And this one is another tar pit. Tar pit part 3. Just taken from examples. Alex O'Connor with his immortal robot. No. Sorry, that's Ayn Rand. The immortal pill. Or immortality pill, let's say. Another one being, say, the Inductica series of the discovering physics and math and such from like inductive principles. The entire foundation of that is just these hypotheticals based on nothing. Ancapism, same hypotheticals. So let's just jump. Let's go to the easiest one to see and work our way through. So the easiest one to see then in this case is the Alex O'Connor. So like for the one example, say the Alex O'Connor example, I've done this one a few times. Alex O'Connor says he offers you some immortality pill. You take that, you become immortal. Do you become amoral? Or can you be a moral being while being immortal? And my answer to this is that's a stupid hypothetical. Because to be alive is to have cells that die. Like the process of, and I don't really believe in death per se in that way, but to say death, I mean the exchange of materials. I mean metabolism. That in one form of thinking about it, death is metabolism, metabolism is death. Metabolism is that way in which a cell breathes in and breathes out certain materials required for its life, without which it would not be a living thing. And so really fundamentally an immortality pill that would make you immortal would kill you, because it would say that nothing about you can be affected or like caused to die, caused to decay, which essentially means that your cells stop metabolizing. It means you no longer have to eat, which means you no longer also have to produce waste, but it means you don't take in sugars, which means you don't fire ATP, which means you don't live. So a hypothetical that, oh well, could we be moral and immortal? Hypothetically. The hypothetical requires the question, if magic exists, if God exists and God allows, what would be in which case you're asking, in a different universe under different circumstances which are not ours and will never be ours, do the rules Stop. The rules won't matter. It doesn't matter what you even discover about that universe. You'd have a nice book for a very fun fantasy sci-fi. Absolutely. But it would not apply to our universe ever. And is entirely meaningless then. It's a hypothetical that does nothing but accomplishes the goals of the one who wants to win the hypothetical. It's a hypothetical for the purpose of winning that hypothetical. Another hypothetical then is the Inductica series for like rediscovering math and physics type stuff, where the hypotheticals go like Murdoch. That's a character from a TV show. He wants to Moolah. What? He makes up a stupid name. Bob wants to know if his army has more men than the other army, so he needs to invent mathematics. Or Dingle Bob needs to find out how much his row by row harvest will yield. And like the hypothetical makes no sense because you're like, so the dude has an army, but he doesn't know how many men are in it. Presumably he, as like the leader, and what it would realistically be a small army. It's not going to be like the United States military. We're starting in like one city state. Presumably he knows their names, right? He knows all of their names. And presumably he's hired blacksmiths to make them all 1 to 2 weapons each. And to make them all 1 helmet each. And one, right? Like, so the hypothetical starts out with like winning if I want to win this hypothetical, imagine a world where magic occurred and now my thing's occurring. Isn't that cool? My thing's occurring now that we made the hypothetical such that my thing. I take from Big Daddy. I like thinking about it in terms of Julian Frankenstein from Big Daddy. It's a game of I win. What are we playing? I win. How do I win? You don't win. How do we play? The game is I win. It doesn't matter. You don't even. There's no rules. The game's I win. Ancap hypothetical. The Ancaps hypothetical goes along the lines of like, imagine you're stuck on an island. Don't worry how you got there. Because if you worry about how you got there, people will know you're there, and then people will come looking for you. You're screwed. No one knows you're there. You somehow end up there. And berries are the only food on the island. Berries are the only food on the island? Yeah, berries are the only food on the island. So, Friday, he's monopolized the berries. And you don't believe in aggression, so you're not going to hurt him for the berries. So, what you need then to make up some sort of laws. Not make up, sorry, you can't make up. They're objective. You need to discover the objective laws that would allow you to get the berries without hurting him. First of all, reality, you hurt him. And you take the berries. Realistically. More realistically than that. Berries do not grow in a void. Berries have pollinators. If there's berries, something pollinated them. If something pollinated them, there's a second source of food. Because things that pollinate typically are things. And those things are typically either other berries or animals. Animals are food. So, now we have to have some sort of other plant. Even if it's another berry bush. It can't entirely be self-propagating. Where do the berries come from? Right? Like, the berries came from a bird dropping them on the island. Birds fly over the island? Wait a minute. Food. I have another food source. I just need to get a slingshot, a rock, and just I just need to throw rocks at the sky and I can get more food. So, like, you can't, this is the thing about being an objectivist, too. Like, you can't stop me from finding reality. Put me on this island and say that berries are the only food, and I will find another resource. Because you know what berries need? Roots. Do you know what roots typically deal with in a really fundamental sense? A fungal network. You're going to tell me mushrooms don't exist? You're going to tell me a berry bush is on this island, but fungus isn't? Nah. There's fungus on this island, too. That's food. And, like, what is it growing in? Right? The berry bush is growing in soil. Soil needs, like, worms and other animals. Like, you can't do this hypothetical. And that, like, Crusoe has a stick. Friday wants the stick to stoke his fire. Crusoe wants it to fish. If there's a stick, there's another stick. There's not. Sticks don't show up in a void. And at most, then you can say that the stick washed up on the island, in which case it's waterlogged and is not good for fishing. In fact, it's now a better stick for stoking your fire because it's waterlogged and won't burn. So, like, it really, you can't just make up hypotheticals whenever you feel like it. That's not how it works. So, did we do it? How many things here have we gone through? Do we crush Ancapism yet? I think so. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment down below, watch my other videos. Give me money on Patreon. Write me a letter. If you email me, I'll give you my P.O. box. And you can write me letters. Don't send me weird shit. That's it. Good night.